Okay, I think we're ready. All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Chop It Up NC. And this evening, our special guest is the new executive director of the North Carolina Democratic Party. His name is none other than Kian Sadjadi. And we're happy, elated to have you on tonight as our guest. Just a word for those who may not be familiar with Chop It Up NC. This is a conversation that is initially about talking to men of color in the state of North Carolina about the issues politically and socially that impact people of color, and in particular, men of color. And so every now and then we'll do something a little different. And tonight is certainly different on a variety of different levels because we're talking to the man who is now in charge of helping our staff with NCDP and also working with our elected board of officers led by Anderson Clayton to make sure that we get on a path to victory. So Kian, welcome tonight. It's good to see you. And there's a lot that I can say about you, but I'm just going to mention two things and then allow you to introduce yourself however you want to our wonderful audience that's here tonight. You served as the state program director for the American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations, otherwise known as the AFL-CIO. And prior to that, you served as National Regional Organizing Director for the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did, Doctor. I know it's a lot of acronyms. It's a big mouthful there, but you nailed it.
Very good. Absolutely. Very good. So, you know, you've carried a lot of leadership hats, and but let's talk about your past a little bit in the roles that you've served in. Tell us about some of those obligations, responsibilities, and leadership roles that you've had.
Absolutely. So, thank you for that introduction. So I've served, you know, I come from Nevada. That's my home, and that's what, you know, kind of where I got my start on campaigns. So my first campaign was in 2018 at the Nevada State Democratic Party. I served as an organizer and then ended the campaign as a regional organizing director. And, you know, my role there was as an organizer, it was all about direct voter contact, volunteer recruitment, volunteer retention, training, and you know, getting folks scheduled and knocking on as many doors as you possibly could during GOTV. My role as Rod, I was basically managing organizing director, so I was one step removed from doing the direct voter contact, but it was always something that really stuck with me. I quickly learned as an organizer that having those face-to-face conversations with voters was one of the most impactful things we can do to really move the needle in these elections. So my time as an organizer really stuck with me, and I kind of bring that through my various roles. So I was fortunate enough to go back to the Nevada State Democratic Party in 2020 as a Rod. We had two regions. So I had all of Las Vegas and 7 of the rural counties, about 2/3 of the state's population. So it was a big, large geographic area, a lot of folks to talk to. During the primary, we were essentially organizing the caucus. So we were recruiting and training volunteers to run our various caucus sites across the state, and also doing a pretty robust voter registration process in addition to our caucus organizing. So this was, you know, we started in mid 2019, and this took us all the way through November of 2020. And February of 2020 when the caucus occurred. And, you know, we had a great showing. We registered about 70,000 new Democrats across the state. And it was a big endeavor. And I think that really taught me how to balance a lot of competing demands. You know, we were doing the early vote caucus, and one had never been tried in the country, so we were kind of writing the rule book as we went along. And the early vote was sort of my pet project along the way. And almost as many people voted in the early vote as voted in the entire caucus in 2016. So it was quite successful. We had a lot of good reception, and you know, we felt like it was a very successful process and really set us up for success in the general. Shortly after the caucus, of course, COVID sort of hit in full force, and as we were shifting to the general election, shifting to the Biden coordinated, we also shifted to completely remote work. And I think that we obviously, it was new. This was something that had never happened on this planet, so were very we had to try a lot of new things. We had to do a lot of outreach to our volunteers. We had to maintain buy-in. We had to try a lot of new digital tools that were sort of became our only tools overnight. And we did a lot of looking at the data. We did a lot of targeting and a lot of different techniques, and tried to get as much out of our sort of digital remote only workspace as we possibly could. So that was quite a shift, but it just required a lot of training of staff, a lot of training of volunteers, and a lot of monitoring as to what was effective in the new world that we found ourselves in. So that was a great experience. I think that we took a lot away from that campaign. Nevada was we were successful, so that's always great. And after that, I did a campaign in New York City for about 6 months. I was Mark Levine's field director. I kind of wanted to get some experience outside of the state of Nevada and experience something different, and boy, did I. It was quite different in New York City. It was a competitive Democratic primary, so it was a very different audience. Obviously, canvassing and tabling and all these things look very different in a city like New York City. But it was a wonderful experience, and I think that it really sort of expanded my horizon in terms of volunteer events that were possible, how recruitment looks, how direct voter contact looks, and sort of expanded my horizons a bit. So I was very grateful for that opportunity. And then election day, the day after was my first day at the DCCC, so I didn't get a lot of downtime. And I was the National Regional Organizing Director for what we called the Rocky Mountain region. It was Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Arizona, Kansas, Nebraska, Montana is where our targeted races were. So I got a lot of experience in new states. My role there was managing the organizing directors in our targeted districts. So I spent a lot of time coaching, a lot of time working with staff who might not have had a tremendous amount of management experience. They might not have written a field plan by themselves. So it was a lot of, really drilling in and sort of, making sure that I was really learning their programs, being familiar with them. And I think one of my most important roles there was really to be an advocate for my team. We had these national goals that were set that were sort of the same across the board, but they didn't make sense in every district. Washington 8 looked very different than Arizona 2, for example. So my role was sort of to take feedback from the organizing directors, report back to the national leadership, and adjust goals, adjust targeting, advocate for additional staff, additional tools, funding, things of that nature. So it was sort of I was definitely sort of in the middle. I wouldn't call it like middle management, but it was certainly I was sort of the go-between between national leadership and the leadership that was in state on the ground. So that was a great experience. That took us through 2022, which I think was a much better year than a lot of people had expected. Our region was quite successful, which I was thankful for. And after that, I moved on to, as the doctor mentioned, AFL-CIO, which was my first sort of foray into labor world. So that was a new experience. That was much more of a political type role. I represented the organization at the America Votes table in a number of different states, Virginia, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Arizona was coming online just as I made the switch over here. So it was a lot of meeting with stakeholders. It was a lot of I took a lot of meetings with partner organizations, trying to figure out who was doing what where, and where the gaps were, and where our organization could sort of fill those. And that, I was fortunate enough to be offered the position here. And I think during my time at AFL-CIO, my heart really lied on campaigns, and I really enjoy the state party structure. And I think that I am somebody who is really driven by knowing that my work has value, and that I'm really making a difference each day. And North Carolina was a state that really resonated with me. I think it's a great opportunity to pick up a state for Biden. I think that there are a lot of it's a hyper competitive state. It's a purple state, and I think that organizing and campaigns in general, they really make a difference here. And I think that the state has been controlled by Republicans in the legislature for a long time, and there are real consequences that have been affecting people's lives in a negative way. So I came to North Carolina to help fix that, and to flip the state for Biden, to get another Democratic governor, and to break the Republican supermajority. So our next Democratic governor has the power of the veto. Got a number of other important statewide races, but we'll get into that, I'm sure.
You get the job.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. As you know, it took us a while to find the right person for the position. And I would say, based upon what I'm hearing so far, kudos to those who made you the choice to lead our staff. And I'm wondering how are things getting along with the members of the staff. Obviously, you also in dialogue with the party leadership, including the Democratic caucus. So how would you say things are moving along? And I'm asking that question and skipping over some others because I think a few things we talked about, you've already responded to. So rather than forcing you to answer those things again, we'll just get into some of the substance of what folks on this call really want to hear and learn about. How are you working with the staff? You talked about experience with recruiting and training, hiring new people. So you have a wealth of skills as you onboard new members, even as you're coming on. How is all that going for you?
It's going very well. So the staff, the vast majority of them were in place when I stepped into the team. So I think that it's kudos to them. Everybody's been very welcoming. You never know how folks are going to react to a new leader on the team. But I have to say that I've spent time. I've had one-on-ones with all the staff. I have recurring meetings with many of them, and I think that we're very fortunate to have such a skilled team here in the state. And I've been just blown away with how well-rounded the team is, how ambitious, how sort of driven and self-starting many of the members of the team are, all of the members of the team really. And what's been really helpful for me as I've sort of settled in, not being from North Carolina, not having worked here, is the amount of candor and the amount of open conversations that we've had. I think that as I was getting ready for this job, you can look up voter registration numbers, you can look at turnout statistics. But what you can't find is the real on the ground knowledge that a lot of the members of staff have. A lot of them were on the ground here in 2022, and some even before that in previous cycles. So I've been spending a lot of time learning about what's gone well in past cycles, what can be improved upon, and also some of the pitfalls that we've experienced in the past. So I think that my goal is really to identify as many opportunities for improvement and try to avoid some of the pitfalls that we've experienced in the past. But I am very grateful for the team that's been very welcoming of me and very open and honest about things that can be improved upon and what they would like to see out of their next executive director. So I'm very thankful for that. I've also had a lot of time of meeting with the members of the Democratic caucus, leaders from around the state, and also spend a lot of time with our officers here at the state party. And again, I've just been blown away with how welcoming everybody is. I know the South is very hospitable, and it has been just a wonderful experience. I've been just amazed at how welcoming and how open all my conversations have been. I feel like I've been given sort of the crash course over the last month of the state. I've been able to speak with a number of the previous executive directors who have again had very honest, open conversations with me, talking about their challenges, talking about their budgets, talking about really getting into the weeds about things. I've also been thankful to sort of be. I ask everybody that I meet with, who's somebody else I should talk to, and I've been pointed in a lot of great directions and I've gotten just a lot of really great insight into the state. So I really value, and I think that it's important, especially being new to the state, to spend time learning who's who's doing what, and it's been kind of a marathon 4 weeks for me, but I feel like I've learned a lot, and I certainly have a much better grasp of a very large and very important state like North Carolina.
So as we think about the state and how you identify, you recognize that North Carolina is a state that has a lot of white people, African Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanics. How do you identify and how does your identity help you to focus on the various constituencies that we have in the state?
Absolutely. So I identify in a number of different ways. I'm a Persian man, so I'm Middle Eastern. Identify with the API community. So I think that being a person of color coming into a state like this that's very diverse is very exciting for me. I know we've got a growing API population, but we've got a very important Latinx population. We've got a very important Black population. We have a lot of one of the things that was very interesting about the state is that we've got the second largest rural population outside of Texas. But there's also a lot of rural communities of color that are very concentrated and very spread out across the state. So I think that historically, from what I have been able to sort of ascertain at this point, is that a lot of these communities have sort of been ignored, left behind, not listened to. and certainly not prioritized by a lot of the campaigns that have been here in the past. So one of my goals is to do early outreach to a lot of our communities of color, to spend a lot of time listening, to hear about the issues that are affecting people in their daily lives. I think trust building is something that's very important to me when I'm doing constituency outreach. I think it's important for folks to know that they have a seat at the table. We're currently in the process of developing our sort of broader strategic plan for the 24 cycle. And while we're getting that together, I've been talking to as many leaders from as many different communities as possible to gain their insight and to really see how we can be better partners of the state party. And I think that oftentimes, especially with a presidential year with a large coordinated coming in, they're going to be focusing primarily on the population centers, the suburbs, where most of the voters live. And I think that a lot of folks get left behind in that strategy. But it gives us an opportunity at the state party to, do our own fundraising, make sure that we have our own staff, and make sure that we are not missing the parts of the state that we know that we need to hit, and the parts that have been left behind, basically in every cycle up to this point. I think that in communities of color in particular, Democrats have a tendency to kind of fly in 2 months before the election, knock on someone's door, ask for their vote, and then we get the vote and then disappear and not come back until the next cycle, and then nothing changes in anybody's lives. So I think it's important to not do that, to start these conversations early, to really spend the time and the resources building that trust and getting to know people on a personal level. And each community is very different. The eastern part of the state is experiencing very different issues than the western part of the state, and our rural, our urban centers. So it's important to really tailor the approach and not just have kind of a cookie cutter, statewide, all encompassing plan. I think it's important to be flexible. I think it's important to gather feedback from the field. We've got 3 wonderful regional organizing directors that are already on the ground, already talking to voters. And the more information we're able to get from the folks who are actually having the conversations on the ground, it really helps us tailor our messaging and helps us I'm hoping to really resonate with communities of color and make sure that people realize that this election is incredibly important. The state is absolutely flippable, and their voice really matters, and is something that we really value as a state party.
2 things come to mind at this point. One of them is your leadership style. Mm-hmm. And obviously, you like to get things done. You are measured, and I would say very calculated, and very specific, which are the kinds of attributes that I think we need and in this juncture. But as I also listen to what you're saying, you recognize that parts of the state are very different. And not that your leadership style has to be different, but you need to recognize, and you do recognize, that there are different ways of communicating, and different ways of messaging. How do you respond to that?
Yes, absolutely. So I think that I'm a real systems and structure person, and I think that really helps the team, especially as the team grows larger and as things get more hectic and more, the days get longer towards the end of the cycle. I think that having effective structures and internal communication structures, things like that, are very important. But I think that as you look at a campaign, obviously you have your sort of overarching goals, you have your numbers, your win numbers, your number of voters that you need to talk to win an election, number of voters that you need to register. But it requires a degree of flexibility, recognizing that each person is different, each community is different, and having an overly rigid set of goals or structures or scripts and messaging, it just doesn't work. And I think that one of the things that I found is that you can sort of be firm with the goal, but the tactics to get there can be adjusted. And I think that it requires a degree of flexibility as a leader to just recognize that and being able to accept feedback. I always have a saying that feedback is a 2-way street. I tell all the staff that even though I'm their boss, I don't grow as a professional if I don't know what's working, what's not working. And in fact, I want to hear what's not working, because if I don't know, I can't make a change. And I think that really setting that expectation early with the staff to know that they have that open line of communication and can push back on things if they're not working in their communities really allows us to be more flexible, more nimble, and will allow us to adapt to changes more frequently than sort of a rigid top-down structure. So that's something that I've always tried to build on my team, and just an expectation that I like to set is that we have goals that are We need to hit them. We know we do, but the way that we get there is certainly up to each member of the team. And I think that coming from organizing world, I there are many different ways to organize, and I think everybody has their own personal style, their own strengths and weaknesses, and growth opportunities. And I think that that's good. And I think that it's important to encourage people to really find their own voice and to find their own way of getting to the objective. And I think that it really empowers staff members. It allows them to grow as professionals as well. And one of the things that I enjoy most about being a leader and being a manager is watching my staff learn and grow and move on after the cycle onto their next thing. And I think that I always like to make sure that people are developing the skill sets needed to really take a step up. And to really we at the D trip we always talked a lot about building the bench, and that meant investing in the staff. We would do hours of training each week, and it was kind of a mix of the core skills, talking to voters, registering voters, things like that. But it was also a lot of management skills and sort of like coaching through crises, dealing with people from different backgrounds. We did spend a lot of time on DEI trainings, which I think were very important, learning how to have those culturally competent conversations with folks. And I think that a couple hours of training spent each week goes a long way in the long run. I think that it also helps staff feel very valued, seeing that we're actually spending time in their own professional development, setting them up for success in the future. And I think that I'm also somebody that likes to drive culture on the team. I think culture is very important. People need to feel happy when they're coming to the office every day. I think people do their best work and are able to push through some of the more difficult times when they know that their work is being noticed and that it's valued and that they're moving the needle at the end of the day, and that they have an open line of communication to management, and that management is receptive to their needs and their challenges. And all of those things are really important to me as we sort of look forward, and knowing that this is going to be a very challenging cycle.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so the question that I was going to ask you after the one I just posed is, obviously North Carolina has been declared by the Biden administration as a battleground state, which means that resources will flow into this state, which means you will also have the capacity to test and try different things to see what works, what doesn't work. What experience do you have, not just with managing budgets, but being under this type of a pressure cooker? Because I think this is a different type of situation here than perhaps New York or Nevada and maybe some other positions that you've held. Not saying you can't handle it, I'm sure you can, but how do you perceive your functionality and your capacity in building and coalescing these diverse entities that you've talked about in this pressure type situation, since we know we need to win in this state in order for Biden to be reelected?
Absolutely, and this is going to be very different. This is a very large state. There's a lot of people. We're anticipating a very large investment from the DNC and the Biden team this cycle, which is wonderful. It's going to give us a lot of capacity and like you mentioned, a chance to try a lot of new things. So I think I kind of come at this from a unique perspective. At the DCCC, I was kind of on the other end of these conversations, chatting with state parties about the coordinated campaign, negotiating buy-in agreements, and so I kind of come at it from seeing what the other side is looking for and seeing what our national committee partners are sort of hoping to achieve in their partnership with the state party. So I think that kind of gives me a unique perspective. I think that state parties have a lot of leverage in these conversations. I think a lot more than many of them realize. And we do have a bit of runway. Obviously I feel a great sense of urgency, but we do have almost a year until election day. So we have a great opportunity here to really create a well-oiled machine in the next couple of months, making sure that we are kind of firing on all cylinders, that we have our senior level roles filled, that we are reaching as many voters, registering as many voters, and really on the ground doing the work as quickly as possible. And that will allow us to come to the table with the DNC, with the Biden team, with our, the D-TRIP, the other committee partners, and really be in a strong negotiating position to make sure that not only are we maximizing the investment that we'll get here in the state, but also making sure that our priorities are taken into account and we don't just get steamrolled, which I think has been a common complaint about past cycles, is that oftentimes the coordinator will come in and they run the show, and everything that the state party or folks on the ground have been doing kind of gets pushed to the wayside. So my goal is to avoid that. I think that we have a great opportunity to create a very compelling case that our program is something that should be invested in, something that should be supported, and not something that should be sort of moved to the side and replaced with something larger. So my goal is really to I think my sort of midterm goal is to really create a compelling case as we start having these coordinated conversations to really make North Carolina a compelling place to support and to invest in, because I think that this is one of the few states that's a flip opportunity for the Biden team as well. I think that we've got a great shot of doing it this year. I think the Republicans have made our jobs a bit easier with the slate that they're going to put forward is quite extreme, and I think quite disconnected from the people here in North Carolina. So they are certainly doing us a favor there. But that doesn't mean that we can take the foot off the gas. And we're going to have to work hard every single day. We're going to have to hire talented staff. We're going to have to train. We're going to have to start doing early direct voter contact. And all of those things will help us, make sure that we get the best coordinated deal that we can.
Very good. I already see one question in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and turn to it and then come back to some of the things that we've outlined for this conversation. And the question seems to be, as I try to read what I see here, how will the NCDP collaborate with groups outside of the party, such as some of the organizations in America? I guess that means America Votes, for example. I hope I'm reading that correctly.
Yes, absolutely. So I do have, from my past experience at AFL-CIO, I was basically at the America Votes table. So I know how a lot of these organizations work. I do want to be careful here. I know that there are some, legal requirements about the C3s, C4s. The wall, as it's called, the sort of the date where we can no longer chat in any way, no coordination whatsoever, is quite late here. It doesn't go up until September of 2024. So we have a number of months where we can start having conversations. And, I think it's important to just figure out who's doing what, where, what the scale of their programs are, what their goals are, things of that nature. And we've already started those conversations. So I have an open line of communication with a lot of these partner organizations that are on sort of the AV table, and also on that side of the we call it the soft side. I hate to use too much lingo here, but the folks who are on that side of the sort of campaign ecosystem, they have been reaching out very consistently. They've been eager to chat as well, and I've been trying to spend as much time with those folks as possible. I've had a number of just wonderful conversations with groups on the ground that have been here cycle after cycle. I think that a lot of these organizations that are sort of outside of the party infrastructure, they stay between cycles. They are the ones on the ground here doing year-round work, which is our goal at the state party as well. But they really have been doing it, and I think spending a lot of time listening, picking people's brains, seeing exactly what has been working, and what gaps they have in their program. Those have all been very important pieces. And I know I said the wall. So the wall is basically it's an imaginary wall, but the state party exists on what's known as the hard side. So political campaigns, state parties, national committees are on one side, and America Votes, Kennedy County, Neighbors on Call, a lot of these other organizations exist on the other side. Basically, the non-campaign and party folks who are also on the ground doing work, registering voters, talking to voters, recruiting volunteers. So that's kind of the distinction between the two. And many of them sit at the America Votes table. America Votes is an organization that brings a lot of these organizations together, and they collaborate, and they pool funds, and do a lot of great work. So I've been using the opportunity to chat with as many of them as I can before September, and I've been very happy with the work that's being done on the ground, and I'm trying to figure out where the state party can sort of fill the gaps, which has been in a large state like this, it's kind of a challenge to sort of put all those puzzle pieces together. But that's why we're starting early.
Okay, let's take a quick break here and let you catch your breath for a second. I want to share with the audience what's going to happen in the next few weeks. We have several Chop It Up conversations, one on December 7th with Gabe Esparza, who's running for state treasurer, and that will be on Thursday, December 7th at 7 p.m. And then again on Sunday, December 10th at 7, Judge Laura Cubbage. And we know we've tried to have her on before, and she had some family issues and just couldn't quite make it. So we had to fill in the gaps with some other types of conversations. But she will be coming, and she will be campaigning throughout this year and early next year, along with Judge Allison Riggs, who was already serving on the Supreme Court, and we hope to have her come also on Chop It Up NC. And so even though this is a conversation about men of color, we recognize that we're also in a campaign season, and we want to give our candidates as much opportunity to speak to us as they possibly can afford to spend, because I think in the end, that informs us, and I think it also helps us to come together as a party around issues that we may not necessarily have the same ideology or framework for understanding. So we're trying to do some things a little bit different with Chop It Up to make it more interesting, more compelling, and more lively, quite frankly, which is the reason why you are here. So I'm going to turn to a few more comments that I prepared for our ED, and then within the next maybe 8 minutes or so, allow you, the audience, to speak and ask your questions directly. Of course, you can put them in the chat if you choose, but I cannot promise you that I will actually read your question if it's in the chat, if others are actually raising their hand. So I encourage you, please raise your hand, use the raise hand feature so you can speak. Kian, tell us about your perception or concerns about several things. I think you've already spoken about technology. How does that work in the context of artificial intelligence? How can that be used in helping us with our campaigns? And quite frankly, how might that interface with concerns of voter suppression that we're seeing across the state, not just in North Carolina, but in many battleground states?
It's a great question. So I think I'll take them in kind of two parts. So in the technology piece, I think that on COVID taught us how to rely basically exclusively on our technology. We were using only phone banks, text banks, virtual relational events where people were reaching out to their friends and family. And that was kind of all we had to go on that cycle. And I think that it taught us, what works well, at what point in the campaign things are most effective, and really was a good test case to show us, which tools in the digital space are most effective and how they can be used. And I think that as we've moved beyond just the sort of purely digital type of campaigning, we still have those tools in our toolbox. So now we're out there knocking on doors, we're tabling, we're registering voters in person, which is all great. But we still have a lot of those digital tools in our toolbox. So I think that it's made campaigns in general in the Democratic space a lot more well-rounded. I think it allows us to be more flexible. I think that there are a number of voters that are, maybe somebody's never going to open their door, but maybe they'll answer a text, or maybe they won't do either, but they'll answer a phone call or an email. So it gives us a lot more avenues to talk to voters who might have a preferred mode of communication that's difficult for us to know unless we've had a conversation with them. So I think that it helps us get in front of more people that might not have otherwise spoken with us. And I think that technology is going to be a critical piece as we move forward. Also very important for fundraising. Social media is very important. There's a lot of surveys that show that a lot of people get their news and information primarily from social media. So being active in those spaces and really creating compelling content is something that our digital team is wonderful at, and I think it's a very important aspect of technology.
Mm-hmm.
I think the artificial intelligence piece is a very good question. I think it's kind of a wild card at this point. This is in 2022. It wasn't really I mean, it was on the horizon, but I think since that time, it's certainly become very much in the forefront, and the advancements have happened quite quickly. And I think that moving forward, it's going to be more of a factor in campaigns. I think that it's difficult to say exactly what role it's going to play in sort of a broader sense, but I anticipate it's going to have kind of a wide-ranging effect, and it's going to be effective in many different areas. So the Republicans have just done the redistricting, which is they gave us a bunch of horrible maps. Oftentimes, those maps are done with complex algorithms that will literally sniff out individual homes, and they've gotten unfortunately quite good at gerrymandering using these sophisticated tools, and it's allowed them to disenfranchise voters at an industrial scale. So, while we have digital tools that make our lives easier as Democrats and allow us to reach more voters, The other side often uses them to disenfranchise as many people as possible. And it's been very concerning to me that, I think that the advancements in technology have not always been used for good purposes. I think that it's something that with artificial intelligence in general, I think that this is going to be the test case. This cycle, we're going to have, we've got a lot of these tools available to us. A lot of them are freely available. People are going to be using them at scale, I think, for the first time in a political campaign. So we are going to be closely monitoring the space. We are going to be trying new things. We are going to be seeing how we can leverage these tools to create more effective and compelling content and reach more voters. But this has not really been done before, so I think that this is the space to watch, and it's certainly something that is going to become more and more of a factor in campaigns as we move forward, and this technology continues to advance at a very rapid pace.
Okay, all right, very good. Let's open it up. We've got a good audience here tonight. What questions do we have? We have some long-term veterans of the party. I think we may even have a few caucus chairs, if I'm not mistaken, here tonight. What questions do you have? Waiting.
Well, Doctor,
Yes.
if I may.
Well, I think Janice Michael may have beat you to the punch by
Okay.
a little
Ladies
bit.
first, anyway.
Okay, all right. So Janice, please ask your question, and then Michael will come to you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. And is it Kian? Is that am I pronouncing that
Kian.
correctly? Kian. All right, Kian.
Yes.
Welcome to North Carolina, and thank you for accepting the position and coming in to help us with this very important work that we need to get done. I think I heard you say that you were going to be doing some DEI training with your staff, if I heard that correctly. The question that I have, it's pretty clear that there's an opportunity or a need for some DEI training amongst the Democratic Party at large here in North Carolina. And I'm wondering, I know I've been having some discussions here in Mecklenburg County around some DEI training being provided to our group and activists and precinct chairs, precinct officers, and so forth. And had even suggested maybe that training being provided in like on a mobilize and then people self-selecting. But have you given some thought to providing DEI training amongst the entire making it available to the entire Democratic Party across this state?
Yes, absolutely. And that's a really good point that, training the staff internally is one thing, but Democrats across the state can really utilize this information. So we have hired a training director, which I'm very excited about. They start this coming Monday, and they are one of the first tasks is going to be to create a training library specifically focused on our counties and our county leadership and folks out in the community. I think a big piece of that should be, DEI trainings and doing culturally competent outreach. I think that it's a really important skill for folks on the ground to learn. I'm somebody who believes that the more I talked about training of staff, but I also think that as much of the training that we can do for folks in the community, people who are there day to day, people who can learn how to have a more effective conversation with their friends and neighbors, people at church, people at the grocery store. All those things are very important skills for just your average everyday Democrat to know. And I think that that's really how we build power in our communities, is to have those skills be widely shared within our democratic space. So I'm very much committed to that. We are going to be creating a robust training library that focuses not only on DEI trainings, but also talks about the core skills of organizing, how to utilize technology, how to do relational organizing, effectively reach out to your friends and family, and how to register voters and what voter registration laws have changed over the years. So all of those things are very important, and I think that I'm committed to really empowering the community. And I think that any campaign or any program, one of my measures for success is what you leave behind. Obviously, campaign professionals tend to move all over the country. I have moved here, and but really, the people who are on the ground, living here every day, they're not going anywhere. And one of the biggest favors that we can do to not only win this cycle, but also, sort of start on a leg up next time around, is to really empower folks in the community to share the skills and the best practices that we've learned, and to really spend that time investing in your average everyday Democrat on the ground. So it's incredibly important to me. It's a great point and a great question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Kian, please forgive me if you have already talked about this. I was a little tardy to the meeting. So I know that one of the goals of the party was to make sure that we have Democrats running in every race throughout the state. And I also understand there have been some recruiting efforts being done to that effect. Can you speak on how that is looking so far?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the commitments that Democrats in the state, I don't remember the exact year, but the kind of contesting every race, this doesn't matter if it's a, R+80 district where Republicans have 80% of the people in the district. Contesting every vote and giving people an option to vote for somebody who represents their values is very important. So it's been a commitment of the state for a very long time. And as you mentioned, we have been doing a very robust recruitment process. We've been partnering with our Senate caucus and our House caucus, and a number of members on staff have been really focusing on this piece. So it's going quite well. I don't want to sit here and say that we filled every seat, but we are diligently working. We've got the filing deadline coming up in about a week or so. So we are coming up on the end of this recruitment process, but we've been very successful in a lot of areas in the state where we've not traditionally been able to find Democrats to run. And we are going to make the Republicans work. We're going to make them spend resources. We are going to make them, have to change their strategy to adapt to this. And I think it's a very effective strategic tool. But I think more importantly, as I mentioned before, we need to give people options to vote for somebody who really is going to represent their values. And we have districts where we know that a Democrat is very unlikely to win, but we don't know that unless we have a quality candidate. And in addition to recruiting and finding somebody to run for every seat, we're not just calling people and being like, hey, do you want to run for the seat? Good luck. We're helping with filing fees. We're helping train them. We're providing websites and digital tools. And we are making sure that people know that if they are willing to step up and run in their community and represent the voices of their constituents, that they are going to have the support of the state party and they are not going to be left behind, and that we are going to be with them every step of the way. And we're going to teach them how to fundraise, and we're going to teach them how to do direct voter outreach, how to reach out to vendors and find folks who can create mail pieces and, radio ads and all the different things that go into a campaign. So, the recruitment piece is very important, finding qualified candidates who are, good representatives of their community and people who have a chance to win, but also making sure that people have the skills to actually to win and to run an effective campaign. And one more plug for our new training director. They recently themselves ran for office, and that was one of the things that was very compelling to us, is that they had this recent firsthand experience, and we believe that they'll be able to provide a lot of very actionable items to all of our folks who are running for office, especially our new candidates.
All right, thank you. So we have another hand raised. Daniel Grant King has a question. Daniel.
So good evening, everyone, and welcome to our new executive director. I am proud that you were chosen for the role. One of my main questions is, how can we as a community involve our young people in such a crucial process, especially with the 2024 election? So is there a way that our community could be more involved in getting them involved, is a lack of a better word?
Yes. So I think the youth outreach component kind of across the board is always a challenge. I think that if young voters turned out at the same rates as our older voters, we'd win every time. These tend to be a friendly crowd for Democrats, so it's a crucial voting block. So reaching young voters is more of a challenge, and I think that the traditional door knocking, phone calls, things like that often don't resonate with younger voters. I think it requires, first of all, doing robust voter registration outreach. making sure that folks are registered to vote. They're registered to vote early, that they start voting early. I think reaching folks, high school seniors, people who are about to turn 18 and able to vote, college age students. I think that the sooner that you can reach a Democrat and get them registered to vote, continue that outreach, letting people know that their voice matters, that even in a state like this where there's so many people, each individual person really has the power to change their communities, and that starts with voting. And sort of building that voting muscle early on, where people just know, hey, every couple of years you go out and vote because that's what you do. And really instilling that as early as possible is really both kind of a short-term gain, but also a long-term gain, because these are going to be lifelong supporters. I think that folks, especially younger people, are looking at a future that is can feel a bit bleak. They can feel like their voice really doesn't matter. I think that a lot of people are sort of uh, turned off by a lot of what they see on TV. They don't feel like the parties represent their values. But I think that it's important to really draw a distinction between what we're up against on the other side and the real consequences that can come about as a result of the Republicans winning this election. I think that we could not see a more clear dichotomy between the two sides. So I think that's something that's important to highlight. I think it's also important to point to the issues that young people care about: the environment, good paying jobs, the ability to buy a house and retire someday. These are all things that are directly kind of top of mind for a lot of people. And really centering our messaging and really having good targeted messaging to folks like that is very important. I think that we really benefit from having, Chair Clayton is the youngest chair in the country, and is somebody who has done a lot of effective outreach to youth. I have certainly done a lot of youth outreach in my time as well. And I think that that's something that helps us sort of build that excitement and let people know that they do have a seat at the table. And much like our communities of color, it requires being in the spaces where young people are, finding unique ways to reach people, reach out to folks, finding ways to build that trust and getting people involved early. It requires being on college campuses, tabling, being visible, and also making sure that people feel like they have a partner in the state party and that we're listening and that we care about their values and we don't just want their vote. We want to change, make sure that they're stepping into a world that's going to work for them. And all of these things, I think, are core to the democratic, our democratic values. It's just about how do we message that to a younger audience who has felt left behind and quite frankly, rightly so, for a long time.
Yes, that really helped. Because even myself, I ran for school board at a very young age, and now I'm running for NC House and slightly an older age, and I always wondered and tried to come up with different ways to involve our young people as well. So thank you for that. That was very helpful.
Thank you, and thank you for running it. I know it's a big commitment, but we really do appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
So do we have any other questions from the audience tonight? We've had up to 3 questions so far. We can maybe take a couple more in the time that we have left before we begin our closing. Braxton Winston. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening. How you doing, sir? Good to see you, good Reverend.
Yes, sir. Candidate for Secretary of
Commissioner of Labor. Commissioner of Labor.
Right. Commissioner of Labor.
And for a few more days, the Mayor Pro Tem down in Charlotte.
That's right.
Sorry, it looks like I'm getting cut off. It looks like my head is cut off. No, I had less of a question and just more of a comment. First time wanted to hop on and meet Kian and say hello. Welcome you to the party. Excited that you're here, Union brother. But I guess my comment would be we are a very large state that it has a diversity of thought, and especially even within our Democratic Party. For better or worse, different areas have different particularities, and those who are active in party business don't necessarily translate well all the time to folks who are affiliated with our party that we're going to need to get out the vote. So my suggestion or comment would be make sure that you are getting out into those communities to learn some of those particularities, because you will be, again, fortunately or unfortunately, held accountable for knowing about those. And the best way to do it is to get out there, not necessarily having, well, I'll let you decide what's best for you, but getting out there to really understand those particularities, I've found is very important when we are trying to translate to those folks who aren't going to show up to the Chop It Up, right? Who aren't showing up to county party meetings, but are still very much Democrats. And we need to find a way to wrap our arms around them. So getting into a bit of a spiral, but I just wanted to welcome you and say that.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be here, and I think you brought up a number of really good points that sort of the internal Democratic ecosystem, the party insiders, the folks who are active, the people that are coming to our events, is a very different audience than the people who are out there on the ground in the community each day that are not as they don't just live, breathe, and eat this type of information. So I think that I am fully committed to visiting as many parts of the states as I can. And you mentioned accountability. I am somebody who really welcomes feedback from every level. And if our messaging, if our tactics are not working, I encourage you to let us know. We cannot improve if we don't know if something is not working in a particular community. So I have a very open, I leave the door of my office open, but I have an open door policy, and I welcome all feedback. And I really encourage people to let us know what's resonating, what's not working. So we know what to expand on, what to pull back on, how to adjust our messaging. And it's really going to be a community-wide approach, not just the party insider crowd, but also the people on the ground. And if we're hearing feedback from people in the community like, hey, I saw this TV ad, I don't like it, I don't like it for XYZ, that is incredibly valuable information. And if that doesn't trickle back to us at the party, we can't make adjustments. So I ask everybody to really hold us accountable. And if something is not working, if something isn't resonating, let us know. We will be a receptive audience, and we are building an infrastructure here at the state party that's going to be nimble enough to make changes and to make adjustments if things are not working. And obviously a lot of unexpected things are going to get thrown our way this cycle, and we need to be able to pivot. We need to be able to change. We need to be able to shift our messaging as events in the world happen, as people's lives are changing. That's something that's very important to me. So I am committed to visiting with as many folks in as many different parts of the state as I possibly can, and not just sit here in Raleigh and talk to the inside crowd, which I'm also doing. But I think that it's important to get a diversity of thought, diversity of opinions, and the only way you're going to do that is to get out there on the ground and talk to the actual folks.
All right, thank you. Last pass. Any other questions of Kian tonight? All right, we're going to jump into a little trivia. It's something I picked up from the executive vice chair of the Interfaith Caucus when we did an interview with Justice Riggs, and we closed our interview with a little bit of trivia. So I'm going to just ask what comes to my mind. What's your favorite drink?
Favorite drink? I come from the desert originally. I love water. I drink about 2-3 gallons of water a day, but I don't know. I'm a big coffee guy, big beer guy, wine guy. I like all. That's kind of a cop out. I'm gonna say can't live without coffee.
Can't live without coffee. Caffeine. Okay. Favorite movie?
Favorite movie? I've got a bunch. Let's see. I like Schindler's List a lot. I like Shawshank Redemption. I like Saving Private Ryan. Hard to pick one of those.
All right. So do you like sports?
Yeah. I do like sports. Yes.
Oh,
I wish I had more time to watch.
All right. What's your favorite sport?
I like hockey.
You have a favorite team?
Golden Knights. That is my team.
Yeah. And do you have a favorite player on the favorite team?
I don't. I feel like they change over their players so often that it's hard for me to keep up. And also now that they don't play nights games on TVs, it's hard for me to keep track.
Oh,
Unless they're playing the teams here. So
huh?
I wish I had more time to watch.
Uh-huh. Who else has a trivia question tonight? All right, I'll continue. Let's see here. Do you like single-story houses or two-story houses?
That's a good one. I like a two-story house. And I can't really tell you why. I just, I always picture like my dream home is gonna have some stairs in it, stairs that go up, not into the basement. So I think a two-story house is kind of what feels more home for me, I suppose.
Okay, and who's asking in the chat? Jan's favorite holiday, and Kayla's
Ooh.
asking, what's your favorite way to spend a day off? I like that question.
Oh, two good ones. So favorite holiday, let's see. I like I'm a big Thanksgiving person, and I love eating. I love Thanksgiving food, and I think that good time to get together with family and friends. And I think that it's just having a meal together is a really nice way to celebrate and chat and catch up. So big fan of Thanksgiving. And what do I like to do on my days off? I'm new here to the state. I'm somebody who likes to go out and kind of explore. So going out, finding new bars and restaurants and things like that. Love seeing my friends. Still making new friends here, but I do have a few, so that's been nice. Also, I'm a big outdoors person. I love hiking. I love getting out into the outdoors. Somebody who grew up and spent many years in the desert. I'm still amazed with all the trees and the green and the water and streams and everything. So I've been enjoying just kind of like getting out into nature and really seeing just what a beautiful state this is. And those are also helps me kind of like decompress after what is often very, very long and stressful weeks. But I just love getting out to nature and seeing as much of the beauty as I can.
Wonderful, wonderful. I do have one quick question to ask you, and then we will wrap up for the night. It seems to me that these are difficult times in which we're living, where there's a lot of dissension and conflict. And as a leader, we have to be prepared in a moment's notice to help people reconcile differences. How do you deconflict stress zones, and how do you bridge gaps and bring people together who are polarized and on opposite sides of issues?
Yes, it's a great question. And like you mentioned, we are in very kind of polarized times. So there's a lot of different opinions. We're a big tent party, as we always say. There's a lot of different opinions. You get two Democrats in the room, you're going to have, many more than two opinions. So I think that it's important to, as a leader, I think it's important to be able to maintain a degree of, I don't want to say neutrality because there often is a right or a wrong answer, but maintaining trust from people on both sides and letting people know that you are handling a process fairly. I think that it's important to not go into conversations about when you might have a couple of parties that are at odds, not to go in and make assumptions, to spend time listening, to find out where people are coming from, why they feel the way that they do, and to really get at the root cause of what a disagreement might be. And I think that will often guide you to the correct answer. And I think that when you have to go and make a tough decision, when people know that you have sort of been an objective viewer of the facts, that you've gotten every side, and that you haven't come in with any preconceived notions, it allows people to maybe not agree with the outcome, but to accept it and to trust that you are, a continued source of, leadership. I suppose.
Well said. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. There's a couple of comments. I wish I could get to them. Tony had a late question. He said, before you go, do you have a thought about a strategy which will include the precincts? And maybe you've already addressed that. If you have, then let me ask you, let me let you answer the question if you want to. Do you have a strategy for helping the precincts?
Absolutely. So I think that oftentimes campaigns are sort of a top down, you vote for president, then you vote for governor, and then you sort of work your way down the ballot. I think that an important way to think about the importance of these local precinct elections and municipal elections is that a bottom up approach is also very effective. Like no one is voting for a precinct who isn't also voting all the way up the ballot. which is why it's so important to support even the lowest, the people that are listed at the very bottom of the ballot. Those are people who are going to generate votes all the way up. And it's also a great way. I think people at the precinct level and at the local level often have a lot of access to the people running for office. A lot of people have your phone number, they have your email, you're their neighbor, you live right there. And I think that people get excited about voting for somebody from their community. And that's a really powerful tool to bring people out who might feel disconnected from national politics or even statewide politics and really just focus on their communities. I think that it's a really great way to bring people out who might get left behind if we just have a strictly top-down approach.
Okay, all right. So that's going to wrap it up for us tonight. There's a couple of announcements that I think I've been asked to make. One of them, let's see if we can find it very quickly. Michael is speaking about a volunteer appreciation virtual event on December 5th at 7 p.m. He put a registration link in the chat, and he mentions that NCDP regional organizing directors are hosting. And so if you can scroll through the chat very quickly, you'll see the mobilized link for that event on December 5th at 7 p.m. We will have again Gabe Esparza, who's running for state treasurer. He is a Democrat. On December 7th at 7 p.m. here on Chop It Up. We invite you to come back and support Gabe and listen to what he has to say about our state treasury and what he plans to do to help us get richer in the state of North Carolina and use our resources for the betterment of all of North Carolinians. And then again on December 10th, Judge Laura Cubbage, who is in Guilford County running for the state Supreme Court on December 10th. At 7 p.m. We have more coming. This is a very busy time, but I want to thank you for your time tonight. Thank you, Kian, for being so thorough and for having an open door policy for all Democrats in the state of North Carolina. We applaud you. We're thankful, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you very much.
You as well. Thank you so much, Doctor.
All right. And that ends for tonight, everybody. So we'll see you at the next Chop It Up event on December 7th.